I've been having these weird thoughts lately. Like, is any of this for real or not?
None of this makes sense to me.
A little over 20 years ago, a game called Never 7 was released, and about 5 years ago I played and reviewed it. It wasn't that good on the whole, but something about that game has stuck with me through the years. In the story, there's this cabin, this place, where all the broken people on this island come together and connect. No matter what sort of heartbreak or time-traveling shenanigans took place, this ragtag group of people stayed together. No matter how crazy things got, and despite all the trauma and lack of obligation, these people kept pulling together. And not for the first time in my life, I had a very similar thought to, I want to find that cabin. I want to feel like that cabin makes me want to feel. But what do you do when something you love is ruined? When a formative experience is retroactively killed? The Higurashi sequel, Gotsu, isn't just a terrible follow-up to the original story. It goes back in time and taints the original. Even if I can look past the effects the sequel has on the characters, the fact is I have to look past it now. It's just one more barrier erected to stop the message, that meaning from shining through to me. It's like going to a loved one's funeral and finding out not only is that person gone forever, but he or she was a serial cheater. Sure, it doesn't erase the wonderful memories you have, but it does recontextualize. Of course, I felt this feeling outside of mediocre romance stories. Fleeting times in my life, I felt it among one group of friends or another. I remember a beach trip near the end of my high school days, where the friends I'd grown up with had one last great hangout. We played games, talked openly about our fears and our hopes, and drew closer together than we ever had before. There was an equilibrium, where despite all the conflicting emotions and raging hormones, different worldviews, for one trip it's like we all came together and supported each other, and really enjoyed each other's company. Of that group, I only speak to one of those people now. One of the friends was forced to drift away due to the equilibrium later breaking and the emotional strain being too much. Another killed himself shortly after the trip. That moment wasn't just fleeting, it wasn't even really real. The promise of a true, loyal group of friends who stick together forever, it wasn't just broken, it was never even there to begin with in the first place. I mean, this is so great, it's almost too good to be true. The world of Tactics Advance offers a perfect escape from the mundane horrors common to real children. Their bullies are gone. All their friends are here, ready to go on a fantastic adventure. The real struggles and lingering pains and physical maladies are all cast off. A land of eternal adventure awaits. Finally, they can escape. This is the happy ending they've all been looking for. Right? Right? Despite all the wonder and joy and dreams fulfilled, our main character can't let go of one niggling thought. That emotional fulfillment isn't good enough in the end, when the means are artificial and illusory. No matter how wonderful a fantasy is to visit, if you can't come home changed, then it's nothing more than mere escapism. Now, of course, not everyone sees things the same way he does. In fact, with every turn he's faced with I was raised on the Bible and still try and read it daily, but I must admit that in my life it's usually been fictional stories that have brought to life real moral principles for me. I honestly didn't understand the value of mercy until reading The Fellowship of the Ring and hearing Gandalf speak to Frodo about its importance. And similarly, it wasn't until watching Spider-Man 2 of all things that I internalized that doing the right thing won't always feel good. In fact, some of your most deeply held desires, the things you want the most, the things you need more than anything else, are at odds with what is good and just and right. Or, to put it more succinctly,
even though sometimes we have to be steady and give up the thing we want the most, even our dreams.
No matter how you look at it, you're unlikely to ever really get what you want. What you desire deep down will either be wickedness in disguised, or a misplaced or mistimed desire for good. The things I want, that cabin, I don't think it really exists here. At best, we'll get a glimpse of it on the road towards our eternal home. And being a person who pursues that will prevent me from doing the good I was placed here to do. It's a type of existence that's extremely painful. But, to quote one of the best movies of all time,
life is pain, Highness. Anyone who says differently is selling something.
But we, as the audience, are privy to a secret. Sophie frequently changes back into a young woman, seemingly at random times. It takes a keen eye, and maybe even a little outside help in the film version. But if you look close enough, you can find the common thread these times when the curse seems to lift. It's the time she's thinking the least of herself, is when she reverts back from being an old woman. In the book, it's explicitly explained that her own obsession with how she looks and how ugly and old she feels is mingled with her latent magical ability to extend the curse and keep her in the form of an old lady. Once you realize this, the theme of self-image and self-obsession becomes evident throughout the entire film. The Witch of the Wastes and how she attempts to hold the form of a sophisticated woman, the warring nations using shows of strength rather than diplomacy to resolve the issue of the missing prince, and of course, Hal shouting,
"I give up. I see no point in living if I can't be beautiful."
That last one is the most interesting, because while seemingly a shallow bemoaning by a looks-obsessed young man, once you're aware of his nature as a part bestial creature that loses his humanity to gain incredible abilities, you realize that his obsession with being beautiful is more than a shallow desire for an appealing appearance, but a desperate need to cling to the humanity he has left and avoid descending into his own monstrous nature. However, even though this desire is not as shallow as it might have seemed, it's still something in the end he must give up to protect those he loves. Even Hal must stop thinking of himself and be willing to sacrifice his humanity. If you've made it this far through this self-indulgent video, you're probably thinking something like, why don't you just get over yourself? I know I am, and that's really the point of this. Trying to encapsulate, to process through, killing that version of myself that once so desperately defined that cabin. Becoming a version that can function well enough to be the dad and husband and friend that I need to be. Killing a persona is easy enough. Building up a new man, that's something I don't know how to do. But I'm going to keep working at it till the day I die for real. One way or another, Dallen must die. I hope the guy who takes his place is a better man than me. Stronger, more loving, more able to do the job set before him. But you can see it in his eyes at this point. He knows. He's known for a while by now. He has seen the man he's turning into. He sees the way loss affects this version of himself. He knows that if he doesn't give up his life here, his character, down to the core, will be corrupted into something else. Despite all his power, is he still a man who cares about the little people? Or do the ends justify the means? Is he standing above all, moving the lives of those around him like game pieces? In the end, despite the struggle, despite the loss, despite the death, he makes the right choice, taking Wilbur's place in the machine. And it ends up being the very thing that saves him. This doctor, so accomplished, so great, but teetering on the edge of megalomania, is replaced by arguably the kindest incarnation of the Doctor yet. To save his soul, the Doctor has to give up his very life. When I was still too young to properly read on my own, my dad and I would have a nightly ritual. He would come up to my bedroom and read to me the Chronicles of Narnia, and I would scratch his back. As overworked as he was, and the fact that he was not terribly in love with reading, made it a not uncommon occurrence for him to fall asleep fairly quickly into our sessions. But bit by bit, we made it through the entire series. It's one of my most precious memories, and I consider Lewis one of my closest and most beloved childhood friends because of this. I'm not sure what spurred him to do this. My dad would sooner willingly electrocute himself just shy of death than read most books, but he did this for me, for years. I can only assume divine providence was involved. Years went by, and as a teenager, I feel compelled to begin examining my faith, see what I could truly learn about God, make it my own, as they say. As I started sifting through classes and debates and books, who would greet me but my childhood friend C.S. Lewis? It turned out he had been waiting in the wings for me to grow older. Where he had planted seeds of truth in my childhood in the form of fairy tales, he now cultivated those fruits through apologetics, science fantasy stories, allegory, history, and more. The delight I discovered at finding my old friend had not only waited for me but had grown with me and had new lessons for the new man I was becoming is among one of the few moments in my life that have felt truly providential to me. Many of you growing older is a sort of death, and in a way it is. But our Lord has called us to die to ourselves on a daily basis. The old man must die, and with him old passions, the old hopes, the old dreams. But like with Lewis, I hope to find that the next me, the older me, I pray it's true, the more Christ-like me, may find other old friends who rejoin along the road as I go.
Sora. You're lucky. Looks like my summer vacation is over.